What's up? Today we're going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda. And is it an RPG? Is it not? What do you think? This is my opinion. I think this is a question that has really been asked a lot. Is The Legend of Zelda an RPG or not? And it's come up again. This time through Nintendolife, they have a talking point. Is Zelda an RPG or not? Well, let's talk about it. And this is just my opinion. And if you want to hear my opinion, make sure you like and subscribe and follow and do all that. And I want to hear your opinion. Because when it comes to The Legend of Zelda, that's a game that I hold, or a game series or franchise that I hold near and dear to my heart, and it is beloved by millions of people, and Breath of the Wild has been wildly successful, selling like 5-6 times the amount of the last game in the series, really. I mean, Zelda is a game that people can trace back all the way to their childhood. Like myself, the first time I played Zelda was on the NES. And it was the first time I was able to play an epic journey that didn't involve passwords, that you could save on cart, and you could pretty much go anywhere and do anything. You could choose how you wanted to tackle the game. You leveled up by getting heart containers and new items that then allowed you to go to new areas. And that is a concept that we got to see in other games too, like Metroid, in the Metroidvanias and Castlevanias, where you don't have access to a certain area. And that's a pretty common trope now, honestly. But when it came to Zelda, that was a big deal. And was that game an RPG, the first Zelda? It sure shares a lot of similarities to RPGs today. It's not, it was open. You didn't do quests, but you could kind of make your own story, and as long as you got to the points you needed to get to eventually, it didn't really matter how you got there. There wasn't experience points. There weren't towns. There weren't people to talk to. There were no levels, strength, magic, all that kind of stuff. You know, it was just an open world adventure game. And for a long time, I think that's just kind of what Zelda's been called. And then every now and then, this topic will come up. Is it an RPG? It's an adventure game. It's an action adventure game. It's an adventure RPG. We'll go through some of the games. Now, the game that I think is 100% the most an RPG is The Legend of Zelda 2. If you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. You defeat enemies and get experience points. You go to towns, you pick up quests, you talk to people. There's an overworld. You have, kind of somewhat random based battles, and then you jump into a battle screen and fight them for experience points, and you level up different areas. 100% that game's an RPG. It's just not a turn-based RPG, which was pretty much all there was back in the day, or when that game was out. That game is an RPG. 100%. Are any of the other games an RPG? And can we say the whole series is, when from system to system, from game to game, the games are so wildly different? Like the Wind Waker, huge open world, and you can do whatever you want, go wherever you want, explore. Yes, that has very strong RPG elements, right? You go to these towns, you talk to these people. You are Link and Link is you. He's not talking, so you're able to identify and play the role of the character, but that's about where it stops. You get items and do dungeons and all that, but you're not leveling up. You're not doing all the things that people consider to be RPG, that I consider, this is my opinion, that I consider to be RPGs. And that's, you are playing through a story, typically with a band of characters, but not always. You have quests that you can do. You have experience points, and you level up different statistics. Wind Waker doesn't really qualify. It's an open world adventure game. Twilight Princess definitely doesn't qualify. Skyward Sword? Nah, not really. That game has more in common with, like, uh, beat 'em ups and platformers that it does RPG. That one in particular. And then there's Breath of the Wild, which took it one step further and gave you like stamina and a lot more gear you can level up, and you gave like value to the gear defense, and you have potions that can increase your stats. That is way more like an RPG than any of them except for Zelda 2. But is it an RPG? I still am going to say no. I think people want to shoehorn entire franchises and games and series into one genre, and that's just not the case anymore. So many games have RPG elements. There's racing games that have RPG elements and quests and, you know, all this other stuff that's going on. It's just kind of embedded into games now. I mean, first-person shooters like Borderlands, I mean, is that RPG or is that a first-person shooter? Is it both? Is it a first-person shooter with RPG elements? And I think that's what this boils down to. The Legend of Zelda as a whole is an adventure game, action adventure game with RPG elements. And that's it. It doesn't have to be an RPG. I know there's going to be those people, you know who you are, who say, every game's an RPG, hook, because you're playing the role of the character. No, come on. That's just being intentionally obtuse. Like, get out of here with all of that, please. You can understand and appreciate the differences between genres. Just because a game has jumping in it and you have to jump sometimes doesn't make it a platformer. It's an action game with platforming elements. So yeah, I'm going to say The Legend of Zelda is not an RPG. But that's just my opinion. What's your opinion? Comment. Hit me up. Let me know. Let's talk about it. And if you want to debate about it, you want to bring up other points, I'd love to hear it. Let's do it. What do you think? All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, for watching. You can catch this on YouTube and pretty much all the podcast platforms. This is my opinion. Later.